Gosh, I've learned so much since 8 years of when I first started investing. But I will say I went into it knowing this isn't something I'm going to do for 3 years. I was lucky I invested in my late 20s and I was like, great, this is what is going to help me build true wealth, as well as that cash flow that I needed to quit my job, which was one of the many goals that I had. But I knew that I was going to be in real estate for quite some time. And so I bought properties that I'd be happy to have in my portfolio for 3, 5, 10 years. It's just now that I'm looking at, okay, what properties do I need to offload? What doesn't have the best return on equity right now? Because guess what, you guys, even these properties in Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri, they have equity in them. And so you sit in the market long enough and you treat your investment well, you're going to have equity. And then I think as a smart investor, you need to always be constantly analyzing your entire portfolio to say, hey, is this money better spent somewhere else?
My name is Rodman Schley. As a real estate expert, I've invested millions of dollars in vacation properties all around the world, and I've been involved in the valuation of billions of dollars of properties. I want to share my 35 years of experience along with vacation home investment tips from the top minds in the short-term vacation rental industry. Now, let's do the work. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast. I'm your host, Robin Schley, and if you've ever dreamed of combining real estate investing with a life of adventure, you're going to love this conversation. Today's guest is Sarah Weaver, a globally recognized author, speaker, and real estate investor who is redefining what it means to live a life of freedom and impact. She is the powerhouse behind 3 companies that serve real estate investors at every single level, and also the founder of Invested Adventures, curating unforgettable retreats for investors in bucket list destinations around the world. With 20 rental units across 4 states and 11 self-managed furnished rentals, Sarah will definitely provide a wealth of information for us right here today. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. You know, I went through your bio and you're kind of living the dream. I mean, you're traveling over the world. You've got investors going with you. You're teaching people how to buy vacation properties. I mean, life's pretty good for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you are in the people business, not every day feels that way. But when I take what I call like a 13,000 foot view of my life, I have a lot to be grateful for. And I think that someone once told me that if your 16-year-old self would think that what you're doing is really cool, then you're doing really well.
I don't know about my 16-year-old self. He might call me a nerd. I don't know. You're nerding out again, Dad.
That's good.
So tell me, how did this come to you? I mean, when you started your business, I know like all of us, we have kind of a dream or an idea or a thought. But when you woke up, what was it that you wanted to do? And what was it that you wanted to teach others?
Yeah, I think for me, at a really young age, I always had this like, oh, maybe not grass is always greener, but definitely like an explorer mindset. I was always the kid that was like reading, 17 magazine about girls that lived in New York City or California or Australia. And I think I always had wanderlust even before I started traveling. And so that really was my like first true love was travel. But I also wear the hat of your typical overachiever. I was the president of a club if I was going to be in it. I don't want to say brown nose, but I definitely was that kid in class that, knew everything about her teachers and her teachers knew everything about her. And so when I started traveling extensively, it almost felt like, how am I going to merge these 2 personalities? Like I have wanderlust, which may be seen as like spontaneous or even irresponsible. If you heard some of the hitchhiking stories that I had, it definitely was a little irresponsible. But then I also wore this hat of like, I want to have a great career. I want to be financially independent and grow my net worth. And so thankfully, I found a way to do that through investing in real estate remotely.
So you truly are building a lifestyle business. And maybe you can tell people a little bit more about how you're doing it and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I own rental properties in the Midwest. We joke that as a world traveler, who doesn't dream of owning an Airbnb in Omaha, Nebraska? And so obviously I'm just kidding, but I don't own, this really sexy portfolio. Some of my clients do. Some of my clients own really killer, mountain houses or condos in Mexico or whatever it might be. But for me, it started out needing cash flow. So if anyone listening here is like, yep, I need this Airbnb or even long-term rental or whatever it is, you need it to cash flow. That was me at the beginning. If I was going to invest 10, 20, $80,000, it had to produce cash flow. And so that's what led me to invest in the Midwest. It helps that I did grow up in Kansas City. But by the time I started investing, I was long gone. I was living in Thailand, living in Korea, living in Argentina. And so, but the real estate really is where the foundation started. From there, I started posting on Instagram. I was like, hey, here I am in Brazil managing my, duplex in Des Moines, which sometimes you'll hear me call it like a dumpy duplex in Des Moines. And I think Californians, or even where you guys are in Denver, were like, wait a minute, you're telling me that I can buy a cash flowing property in Nebraska, but not change my lifestyle and continue living in an expensive market? And I said, well, yeah, of course. I'll teach you how to analyze a market, how to analyze a property, how to build an on the ground team, and then have a successful portfolio no matter where you live.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty cool. And you think about it, you talk about, some of these opportunities in some of these areas that you wouldn't typically think about investing in. But, for me, I know that, by the way, I lived in Kansas City for a while. I also lived in
Oh,
Omaha,
oh,
but I did grow up in Nebraska. But a lot of those places are overlooked, and the
Mhm.
investment fundamentals are often pretty good. So you can get really good returns on your investment as compared to Denver. Things are so priced so high that a lot of times it's hard to get that return that you want on your investment. Unlike an Omaha or a Des Moines or a
Mhm.
wherever it might be. I know even Kansas City is starting to get up there in pricing, but nothing like Denver or say California. But my best deals came out of Omaha, Nebraska. My best deals came out of Kansas City, Missouri.
Amazing. Mine as well. And so you get it. And I think that for people like us, we saw the opportunity and we saw, why would a renter live in Omaha? Why would a renter live in Kansas City? It's hard for someone who was born and raised in LA to understand the potential in these markets. But when you lay out the cash on cash return and the opportunities, it's a no brainer. So what happened is I realized I could double my rental income by doing a furnished rental strategy. And so I know that you guys talk a lot about vacation rentals here on the podcast, but I have a kind of unique spin. What I found is to have a true short term rental, a 2 night, 3 night, even a 7 night stay, that was not jiving with my lifestyle.
Mm.
And so if anyone here is feeling like, hey, I have a demanding job, like we have an orthopedic surgeon in my coaching program,
Mm.
and they can't be checking their Airbnb messages if they have a 7 hour surgery that day and then a 7 hour surgery the next day. Guess what? They don't want to be checking their phone even when they're not in the operating room. And so what I learned, I wasn't in an operating room. I was hiking Kilimanjaro or backpacking around the Thai islands. And what I learned is that I hadn't created a lifestyle business. I had
Mm.
created another job that was tying me to my phone, and typically never things that I was excited to handle. And so what I learned is if I just switched to a 30-day minimum, then my tenants stayed in my units on average 87 nights in
Mm.
last year. So let's call it a 90-day stay, right? So they stayed in my unit for 90 days. What was great is about, let's call it 75 of those 90 days were silent.
Mm.
So then
Yeah.
someone might say, okay, Sarah, that sounds great, but why not just do long term? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. That 1 bedroom unit would rent for 800 long term. I can rent it for 1900 as a midterm rental.
Mm.
And so that extra, let's call it $1,000, that's why.
Well, so Sarah, who are you going after? Is this traveling nurses? Is it corporate people coming in for temporary positions? What type of people are coming into your properties?
So in this particular building, let's talk about specifics because I love talking numbers. I think people want to see what it is. So I own a fourplex. They are 4 1 bedroom, 1 bath units. Nothing shared, no common space. It's just a typical small little apartment building. It's called a fourplex. I happen to also own the one next door. So I have 8 units, all almost a shared driveway. They're right next door to each other. And in 2021, 2022, into 2023, it was 90% travel medical professionals.
Mm.
Now, the first thing that I get nowadays, being 2025, is people are asking, oh, well, I heard it's down. Guess what, you guys? 80 to 85% of my tenants are still travel medical professionals.
Mm.
And so who makes up that extra 15%? It's usually somebody who's relocating to Nebraska for their job. I just actually recently was hosting a British man who was there for work. There are people who their partner or a loved one is actually the one in the hospital. And so they were sick of staying in extended stay. So now they want a kitchen and somewhere to really be able to turn off at night when they're not sitting with their loved one in the hospital. And so there's a number of reasons why someone would stay in my unit. I think the more important information that I can share with your guests is that I list on Airbnb, I list on Furnish Finder, and then I sit back.
Mm.
And it's not passive. I really don't like when investors try to say, oh, passive income. Guys, it's not passive. I've sent 3 Airbnb messages today, but I've started to really track my time because I've actually gone back into the trenches. So this is something new. If anyone's ever heard me on a podcast, I've always raved about virtual assistants handling everything and having a team. So yes, I self-manage everything. I don't have a property manager. However, I just recently had to let someone go. So I'm back in the trenches. I don't want to jinx anything, but it's not that bad. This is not a long-term play. I do plan on hiring someone new, but I wanted to get back into the trenches to really find out how long is this actually taking? So great example is cleaner went to the unit, tub is not draining properly. I don't know why the Airbnb guest didn't say anything, but they left a 5-star review, so I'm not going to complain. Had to text the plumber. The plumber says, great, I'll be there this evening. The whole ordeal took less than 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not that orthopedic surgeon, right? Like that's
Right.
6 minutes that I have created space in my life to spend 6 to 60 minutes a day on my portfolio, which I wouldn't say I do every day. Over the last week, I've been tracking really meticulously, which is not common. If you would have asked me a month ago, I would have guessed. But because I've been tracking meticulously, I have spent less than 1 hour on all 20 units in the last week.
Yeah, I always tell people too, it's really important to take a look at what's important to you or your own scenario. You need to build your own life around your own design. And like you said, you've got this surgeon who, yeah, he's not going to step out of surgery to respond to an Airbnb guest or to get somebody booked in, but that's okay, right? I mean, it's that's why it's important that you need to take a look at yourself and go, number one, you got to understand, you said something something that's very impactful that I think about all the time, that this is not passive income.
No.
This is a business.
It is
You got to run a business. Now, if I want passive income, I'll go buy an industrial building and I'll get somebody in there for a 5-year lease and then another 5-year renewal. And I'll just gradually have a few things that I have to take care of. But when you're talking about this level of investment, you got to say, okay, how much can I do? How much do I want to do? What's important that I do? And what can I just have somebody else do? And for me, for an example, I like to have somebody in place. I can't take those calls. I don't have time. I can't get those messages. I don't have time, but I got really good people in place who do those things. And
exactly.
So you got to decide your level of activity. How active can you be in what you're doing?
Yep. And this time last year, it was absolutely no availability. And so I had 2 assistants in the Philippines managing everything. I had a great year. It was a really good year, both in the other avenues of business, which I'm sure we'll talk about, as well as my rental portfolio. It was wonderful. People are people. I've had to let someone go in the last 2 weeks. And so now I'm back in the trenches, but that was an intentional choice. So I'm in the middle of interviews to hire someone. And I just wanted to get a better pulse on my portfolio. What's really taking the virtual assistant so much time? And where is there areas for improvement? Because I've had a portfolio for quite some time and it's still, there are areas for improvement.
Well, and if you don't know, if you don't know the structure and how long things take, you're not going to know the difference on what they're doing there. And I always tell people, you got to, when you're running a business, you got to know how to run the broom. You got to learn how to run the cash register. You got to learn how to be the accountant. You got to learn every layer of your business, because if somebody steps out of that business and then you don't have somebody immediately to take place, it's you own the business. You got to be able to jump in.
I think one caveat is because I see it, because I also run a coaching program. I help people grow their rental portfolios all across the country. And one of the things that often keeps people in a stuck mode because they're living in fear is they say things like, well, I don't know how to negotiate with a contractor. I don't know how to replumb a bathroom. I don't know how to write a lease. And so one of the things that I encourage everyone to do is what I call just in time learning. And so I don't need to know how to negotiate with a contractor yet.
Until
I
you have
don't
to.
need to know how to write up a lease yet.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to invest in real estate, these are things that you're going to need to learn. The first thing you'll learn is you don't need to know how to replumb a toilet because you're going to be really good at negotiating and interviewing contractors and they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that seems really scary when people are starting out. And I think that I help them kind of talk them off the edge and realize, oh, I am capable of doing way more than I ever thought possible.
Oh yeah, and the thing about it is we've got so many resources at our fingertips these days. I mean,
Yeah.
I always tell people all the time, yeah, get good coaching. Number one, get a good mentor.
Yeah.
That'll take X amount of years off of your learning curve right out of the gates. But then
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting there stuck, I mean, the stuff that we have now with ChatGPT to be able to ask questions, the availability of information, what you can get from YouTube, it's just amazing how much. Like growing up, I never had access to this type of information. I had to go to the library, grab a book, hope to find the answers. But now, just like this, we have really good, solid information really quickly.
Absolutely. So I think what's really holding people back is that they're scared.
Mm,
And so the best way to move forward confidently is learning the skills necessary. And so I think learning how to analyze a deal is the foundation of everything.
hmm.
And if people can get really good at that, then they can make educated decisions about their investments.
Well, I agree 100%. And I always tell people I come from the valuation world too, investment and valuation. And for me, it's kind of like I don't understand how people come in and they want to buy these properties on emotion. And these should not be emotional purchases. This is a business. You need to
Yeah.
understand cash flows. You need to understand. Some people go, well, I don't even know what an ADR is. Well, let's start there, right? So
Exactly.
how much revenue are you going to generate? What's your occupancy going to be? A lot of people just, they don't even look at the expenses. They just come in and go, well, I really like it here. We can just rent it when we're not here. We're going to make a lot of money. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, wait a minute. Based on what?
Yep.
Have you run
And
those
for
analytics?
and for some people that is their investing journey. So I've already shared at the beginning I needed cash flow. Well,
Hmm.
now that I've hit my cash flow goals, I think that I can invest in something where, hey, if I want to own a lake house and it breaks even if I, put it on Airbnb the rest of the year and rent it out, then great. I just got a lake house that is no longer a true expense all of the
Hmm.
time. But I think if you're buying that scenario, thinking that it's going to be a cash flow for performing property, that's when you have a problem.
I agree 100%. And it really, like you said, it comes down to your investment strategy and what's important to you and what you want to get out. Some people might be like, hey, I don't want to rent it, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And that's fine.
Yeah,
As
totally.
long as you understand what that looks like in your scenarios and how much you can bring in and what that's going to look like for your household income and such. Some people might not even care about that. I mean, some people buy houses, of course, and they're like, I don't want anybody coming in there. I'm going to buy it and I'm just going to use it. Or,
Yeah.
when do you want to retire? Do you want to use this as a retirement house?
Hmm.
What's your exit strategy? How long do you want to hold? Do you always want to be in this market? There are all these questions that are out there. But what drives
Hmm.
me crazy is when people aren't looking out and they're not thinking through the fundamentals. And when you're not looking at the fundamentals, it's like when COVID hit, nobody was buying on fundamental. I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people who came into the market and were new were not buying on fundamentals. They just said, hey, we're in COVID. We can't go anywhere. I would rather be up here 6 months out of the year. And
Hmm.
then so many people were moving around and so many people were renting at that time that it was easy to make money. And then
Hmm.
when COVID went away and things went back to the normal market fundamentals, people started wondering why they weren't making money. And it was simple because you didn't understand when you bought it what the fundamentals were in the marketplace. And you just bought it based on what you were seeing happening today, not necessarily
Absolutely.
what was happening yesterday or was going to happen tomorrow. Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Vacation Property Seekers podcast. I want to let you know about one question that I get all the time. And that's, how do I forecast my cash flow and my profitability when investing in a vacation home? Now, if you've ever wondered that or you know somebody who has, you're in the right place. We've created a free training called Financial Forecasting for Maximum Vacation Home Profitability. Now, In this training, we're going to guide you step by step on how to accurately project rental income, estimate your operating expenses, and calculate your returns so you can make informed investment decisions. You can access the free training at vacationpropertyexpertnetwork.com. So if you're ready to dive deeper into financial fundamentals and maximize your profitability, visit vacationpropertyexpertnetwork.com.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one thing. I mean, gosh, I've learned so much since 8 years of when I first started investing. But I will say I went into it knowing this isn't something I'm going to do for 3 years, right? I was lucky I invested in my late 20s and I was like, great, this is what is going to help me build true wealth as well as that cash flow that I needed to quit my job, which was one of the many goals that I had. But I knew that I was going to be in real estate for quite some time. And so I bought properties that I'd be happy to have in my portfolio for 3, 5, 10 years. It's just now that I'm looking at, okay, what properties do I need to offload? What doesn't have the best return on equity right now? Because guess what, you guys, even these properties in Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri, they have equity in them. And so you sit in the market long enough and you treat your investment well, you're going to have equity. And then I think as a smart investor, you need to always be constantly analyzing your entire portfolio to say, hey, is this money better spent somewhere else? And with some of my properties, the answer is yes. With a majority of my properties, it's no. I mean, the cash flow that I get from those fourplexes that I mentioned, I mean, it's a no-brainer to continue to hold on to those.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious on Kansas City. I mean, you keep talking
Yeah.
about these markets that I've invested in. Which part of Kansas City are you liking?
So I'm in a unique position. So I own a duplex in Pendleton Heights. So just next to Columbus Park, if anyone's invested in that neighborhood is like started to gentrify. I think it's a great long-term buy and hold. I bought in Pendleton Heights, which is just next door. And it's been great. It's a total sit it and forget it. I
Mm.
had the greatest tenant move in, and you don't want to knock on wood, but she's going to be a forever tenant. And so the property is doing really well. Is it, doubled or tripled in price? Well, no, of course it hasn't. But it's a great long-term buy and hold. So really happy with that. My very first property that I ever bought was in Prairie Village, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought it not knowing everything that I know now, but here's what I did know. I knew that I could turn it into a rental. I knew that I could get roommates, worst case scenario, and I could live in the property and it would more than cover my mortgage and I could live for free. I knew that I could then eventually move out and turn it into a true rental. At the time, it could have been a furnished rental. There's now short-term rental laws that have passed, which I anticipated were coming. I mean, it's Prairie Village, for goodness sake. And so for those of you that don't know, it's a good school district. It is like a quaint little suburb of Kansas City. And people are a bit pretentious, so it's very interesting. And so I always knew, listen, this is going to be a long-term buy and hold, but if things don't work out, it's an excellent flip. I bought
Mm.
the worst house in one of the best neighborhoods, which I think is like investing ABCs, and I knew that worst case scenario it could be a flip. So I'll share the numbers on this one. I bought it for 217,000 in 2017. And because I lived in it, my down payment was 3%.
Mm.
So for about $7,000, I got into one of the best neighborhoods even in Prairie Village. It feeds right into the shops, making a very unique situation where it is walkable, which is not common for any suburbs of, I think, second tier cities. And so it's quite walkable. But more importantly, I saw the trend. They were tearing these Cape Cod houses down and
Mm.
building 3,500 up to even 5,000 square foot homes. And those houses, when I bought in 2017, were selling for 750 to 900.
Oh, wow.
Fast forward today, they're listing for 1.3 to 2.1. Most of them selling anywhere between 1.5 to 1.7.
That's
And
pretty awesome.
so it is pretty awesome. I owe, let's call it 168 on it, $168,000. It's still just the little Cape Cod, guys. It's not the $1.7 million new build. I would need to tear it down and build that.
Mm.
But here's the best part. My PITI, principal, interest, tax, and insurance, is 1587. I'm renting it long term for $3,100.
Oh, that's awesome.
No utilities included. no
Hmm.
lawn care provided, and it's a sit it and forget it strategy. And because it's in a nice neighborhood, most of my tenants renew. So I've had 2 year, 3 year tenants in that property. And so that's just one example of kind of what Kansas City can provide.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because, yeah, I mean, you might be a Cape Cod, you might be a little bit smaller than the neighborhood, but I'm in a neighborhood with all these beautiful homes. So if I'm a tenant, yeah, I think I'd be going, oh, I hit gold on this one. I don't have to pay as much as I probably would for these other properties, but I'm in this neighborhood that's great. And so, but it's funny like that when you talk about how things change, you talk about appreciation over time too. A lot of people aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about the cash flow now, but appreciation should be such a big part of your investment strategy. Thinking about, okay, what am I going to be? I always think back to my dad. Always tells me the story about when he was in Huntington Beach, California. I was a baby. I mean, I was like 1 or 2 back then, but they had an opportunity to buy this 3-bedroom home, really a nice home. It was in 19, I think it was like 69 maybe, and they offered it to him. Said, "Hey, we'll sell you this home for $22,000." Back in 1969. Of course, now that house, you couldn't get it for under 1.5, even close to $2 million in Huntington Beach, California. But at that
Yeah,
time,
and
it seemed like a lot of money.
it's probably been renovated twice,
Maybe
like
I've
maybe
I've been
less.
back past it, and it's a beautiful home. It looks a lot the same. Of course, people do a little bit here and a little bit there to a home, but my gosh, I mean, people don't look at the appreciation side. And some of these
Hmm.
markets, like you're talking about, when I tell people to go in a market, try to get one that's underutilized, a market that maybe is going to bloom and
Hmm.
it hasn't bloomed yet. Get in
Yep.
there while the pricing is still right, still where you can get some good cash flow in that, but where you can also
Yep.
say, well, guess what? In 10 years, I really think this market is going to expand significantly and go up in value.
Absolutely. And I think also I would caution anyone to only invest on appreciation.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on where they're at in their life and what role real estate investing is going to play. So that duplex that I mentioned just outside of Kansas City, I didn't buy that for appreciation. I bought it because the cash flow was $1,300 a month while setting aside, 10% for capital expenditures and maintenance, 10% for property management, and I self-manage, and another 10% for vacancy, and it's still cash flowed $1,300. When you're
Mm-hmm.
only taking home $3,000 to $5,000 a month, $1,300 of cash flow is so exciting.
Yeah.
And so that was a game changer for my portfolio at the time. Has it appreciated a ton? No, but it has, because on average we're seeing 4% nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Midwest, there's some years I'm getting 7 to 17% appreciation. And so
Right.
I'm beating the national average and I'm cash flowing, which really is that sweet spot for me where I'm at in my investing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I follow the multifamily market here in Denver all the time, and for a long time, people were trading, on multifamily properties at like a 4 cap,
Yeah.
and you'd run the math and go, well, you're not even making any money once you put your leveraging, you put your financing in place at a 4 cap, and they were always banking on that appreciation, right? It's like,
Hmm.
well, I'm going to invest on the appreciation, I'm going to gamble on that, but as an example, I was working with an investor the other day. He had bought a property back in 2011. He bought it for, I think it was around $300,000 back in 2011. And his valuation came in and he was, close to $1.5 million. So I'm like, well, okay, it paid off in that. Maybe you paid a really low cap, but you had good appreciation, but it's a gamble.
Yeah,
Also, I
absolutely.
would look for both. I want good return on my money and the hopes and the prospects that I'm also going to have very good appreciation.
Absolutely. And then I would even go a step further. I want to have a property that's not also going to be a headache.
Mm.
And so one thing I learned, and I'll caution anyone in your audience, is sometimes you can buy these cheaper properties, but guess what? You're going to get a plumbing issue every other guest. If you don't have money, you're going to be band-aid repairing that plumbing issue when really you probably should go in and replumb the whole bathroom.
Hmm.
And I tell that from exact experience. It's exactly what I did at the very beginning until I realized, oh, it would actually be better for me to pause all guests for 2 to 3 weeks, just go in and completely redo this,
Yeah.
and invest that money again, because I know that property is going to be in my portfolio for the next 3 to 5 years, or at least that's what I anticipate. And so I think it's so important. Man, we touch on so many different things. And my hope is that we're not overwhelming new investors. Like, it really is possible, you guys. You can kind of stumble through this if you're smart and you make good decisions. And then better yet, if you don't do it alone.
Oh, 100%. And I always preach that it's kind of like get a mentor, especially if you're just getting into the market. I mean, the thing is, and I always tell people, I mean, there's so much knowledge that's out there, but you can go learn the hard way and take maybe 5 years to get down a path, or you can take 2 to 3 years off of your learning
Mhm.
curve, which are invaluable. I mean, how much is
Yeah,
that worth to anybody to be able to get to a point where their learning curve is diminished to the point where they don't make a lot. I would think back to my trajectory in my career, and I had a person. When I started out, I was buying and flipping in Kansas City, up in kind of the
amazing.
Gladstone areas where I was buying and flipping.
Yeah.
But I had a really good mentor. I was young, I was 18 to 25. He was a good mentor of mine, and we'd go in and we'd buy houses, we'd flip them, and then we'd split profits at that time. But I'm so thankful that I had him. There's no
Yep.
way in the world that I could have come in and just did that, especially at 18 years old myself. The lessons that I would have had to learn the hard way, the money that could have been lost, not
Yep.
understanding the marketplace, not understanding renovations. There's so much that if you don't understand it and you try to do it on your own, you're just going to lose time. You're going to lose money. You're just going to hurt yourself. So pay that little bit of an extra bit now. Get into
Yes.
that coaching. Go get that mentoring. Go take those classes. Go take those programs and learn it. Learn it so that you don't have to learn it the hard way, which is usually, again, time and money lost.
Absolutely. I once heard the analogy that doing it on your own is like taking the stairs to the penthouse.
Mm,
You may get there. Like I have been described as incredibly gritty. I'm figure it out. There's no doubt that I would get there eventually, but gosh, what if I stopped, at the 27th floor, at the 31st floor, and then how long would I stop and wait, right?
mm,
Whereas paying for a mentorship program, and there's great mentorship programs out there for anywhere from like $1,000 to $10,000.
mm-hmm.
And so if you could pay $8,000 now to take the elevator to the penthouse and then be at the penthouse in 2025 and then gain all of that knowledge and then continue to grow your portfolio, you're going to 10x your investment on that $8,000.
Easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I always think about like my wife. We have a flower farm here in Denver, and
Oh,
we're
wow.
on about 3 acres. It's great. I love it, but it's my
What a
wife's
great
flower
time of
farm.
year it is. That's
I know
really
right now
cool.
they're out planting. So if you hear tractors in the background, that's those guys going to town. But at
Amazing.
the end of the day, my wife wanted to have this flower farm. She didn't really have all the tools and the resources and the knowledge to really do everything that she wanted to do. And she had an opportunity to take this course with this national gal who has an incredible flower farm up in Washington. And the course was like $2,000, right? And she came to me and she said, I don't know if I want to spend this $2,000 to take this course. And I told her, I was like, spend it
Yeah.
all day long, because what you're going to do is you're going to, again, go from that 5 year learning curve to a 2 year learning curve, or you're going to pick up this information that you would have never known until you were in that field. And then something went wrong or something went bad, or I had to pay
Which could
too
be way
much
more than a $2,000 mistake.
all the time. And I'm telling
Yep.
people, it's like, it drives me nuts when people go, well, that's too much, or I don't want to pay for that, or I'll just learn it myself. And I go, God, $2,000 in the grand scheme of things to learn this type of information, this knowledge is really priceless. And
Yeah. And I don't think any of us are saying you can't figure it out by yourself.
you
No,
will.
I'm sure there's so many people out there that will figure it out by themselves. But why wouldn't you want to do it better and do it faster?
Mm,
That's what I think that's one way that I get a lot of investors coming up to me who the average age of my student is 47.
mm,
I'm 35. I started coaching when I was 31, and I continue to always attract people older than me. And I've talked to one of my friends who is a coach, and she's in her 20s, so she always gets to coach 20 somethings. And
mm-hmm,
I've always wondered, why is that? Why is that? Why am I always coaching people older than me? Well, they came to me and they said, well, because Sarah, we don't have time. And you went from zero to $10,000 a month in cash flow in less than 5 years.
mm-hmm,
That's what we want to do because we're not in our 20s. We're not in our early 30s. We can't get this wrong. And we need to do it quickly because retirement is just around the corner, or at least we hope it is. And so I think that also I would encourage people to find someone who has what you want so that they can show you how to get there.
mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't make sense to join a flipping course if you want something a little bit more passive, or it doesn't make sense to join my program if you want to be flipping because I don't teach flipping. I flip in Kansas City, but I'm the private money lender because I want at least one part of my life to be passive.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting to me too, because you're talking a little bit about demographics. And if I look at the demographics of the people that we work with and such, it's a very similar demographic. I'm always kind of shocked how skewed it is toward men, because I know that there are so many incredible female investors out there doing things. But I think that sweet spot between 45 and 50 is a pretty big market of people who, like you said, we don't have time. We need to
Yeah.
know this now. We don't have the opportunity to mess up the first time around. So teach us.
Yeah. And then you can imagine right now I'm at 85% women because I've had women come up to me in hallways and say, "Hey, Sarah, we have never heard from someone like you." And
Mm.
I'm like, there are other women up there. And so I asked, I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "You're unmarried and you don't have a wealthy spouse or even a spouse." I'm like, "Okay, you don't need to remind me and rub it in my face." No, but they're saying you did it on your own.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, okay. So then I started being a little more vocal about, hey, like I'm doing this on my own. I don't have a backup plan. I don't have double income. It's just me. And then I think regardless of the investor's marital status, they're like, okay, if Sarah can do this on her own, I can do this. And
Mm.
then because you've lived in the Midwest, I love to like, guys, I am just a girl from Kansas. Like if I can figure this out, you can figure this out.
That's what I tell people. It's like, hey, I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. Well, I wouldn't grow up on a farm, but I was in a farming community. I was urban in my 7,000 population town that I grew up in. So I was
That's
telling
like
people, it's like, if an idiot
that's like
like
my
I can do
parents.
it, anybody can do this stuff.
Absolutely. And so that's exactly what I do is I invest in real estate. I teach people how to invest in real estate through my coaching program. I also wrote a book. If anyone, I always tell the people that's the cheapest, best way to get information is go to your local library or spend the money, buy the book. The book that I wrote is called 30-Day Stay. And I walk people through exactly what they need to do from beginning to end to launch one of these midterm rentals that I talked about. But then it was really interesting. Then I created a new problem for my clients is
Uh-oh.
they're in Denver. I convinced them to, launch an Airbnb in Nebraska. And then they're like, how do I furnish it?
Mm.
And so because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm like, oh, we can do that. I don't know who we is, this mysterious we. So I read the book Who Not How, and I found the who, and then I launched a company called Aria Design Services. And so we
Ah.
actually furnish Airbnbs or furnish rentals nationwide. We just launched 2 last week in Cleveland, Ohio. And I never went to Cleveland, Ohio. My team flew there and did the installation. I have a team of designers, and we handle everything from beginning to end to help investors launch a 5-star furnished rental.
I love that. I wish you were doing that in Costa Rica, because my property's
We'll,
down there.
we'll go to Costa Rica.
I'll tell you, well, the difference there is you can't go to Nebraska Furniture Warehouse. You got to go to the local tradesman and go, hey, can you build me some bunk beds?
Yeah, well, hablo español, entonces I think it's a good idea.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah,
Hey, Sarah, I
yeah,
want people to be able to find you, number one. I know we're kind of getting to the end of the
yeah.
podcast here, but can you tell people where they need to go to find out information about you and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So my website is sarahdweaver.com. And then my Instagram is the same. And so if anyone's listening, you heard anything that you're interested in, you heard something you didn't like, I'd love to hear from you. If you are follow-up questions, when I say this, I really mean it. I read every message. I love hearing from you guys. So please reach out. Instagram is probably the best way. Or if you prefer email, it's just hello@sarahdweaver.com.
Love it. And just, you got to get one more question here. And I didn't warn you about this question, so this is going to be new
Okay.
for you. But if you could go back in time and just give yourself, your young investor self, your best piece of advice based on what you know now, what would be that one piece of advice?
Buy more real estate. Yeah, I think that as a new investor, you always think money and funds is your biggest problem. But the moment I learned about private money lending, JV partnerships, even just building a great relationship with a local bank or a hard money lender, there were so many good deals that I passed on
Mm.
because I didn't have the funds or the funds fast enough. I wish I would have bought more, but maybe not faster. I did go from 3 to 15 units in 90 days. and I paid for it. That was really fast, and I didn't have the systems in place. Whereas now I have a Loom video or a recorded screenshot video of every step of my portfolio. There's now nothing that I've done or need to do that isn't a training video in a Google folder. So when I do, step out of the trenches, as I've mentioned, and hire this new person, they have everything there, because I think having a team faster would have been the second thing I would have done. I think a lot of investors are scared to hire someone because they think, what if the money doesn't come in? How am I going to pay for this person? The best thing I did after buying a significant amount of real estate was hiring a virtual assistant.
Well, Sarah, number one, thank you for coming on the show. You're an incredible investor. You're somebody who, if you were living here, we'd be hanging out quite a bit, just swapping stories and helping each other get a little bit better too. But I appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing everything with our listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. By leaving a review, you not only support the show, but you also help others find and enjoy it just like you did. Also, please share this episode with somebody who could benefit from it. And if you're aiming to build a short-term vacation rental investment business that's based on strong investment fundamentals and not just emotion, I'd love to invite you to a free training that I'm hosting. It's my financial forecasting for maximum vacation home profitability training, an on-demand video course that's completely free. It walks you through the investment fundamentals to build and scale your short-term vacation rental business. You'll also learn how to estimate investment income and your operating expenses to build a projected pro forma operating statement and the potential NOI and return on investment for your property. Just go to vacationpropertyexpertnetwork.com to get access to your free training. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Vacation Property Secrets Podcast.